It is September the 2nd, 2025. Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site. Bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, folks, I'm fascinated by the public mood on this Canelo versus Terence Crawford fight. Right? Let me just make a few points here. There is a line that's dropping on one side of the play, believe it or not. People are piling into the underdog, Terence Crawford, who's now, this morning, according to bovada.lv, and I'll post the odds in the description section of this video so you can check on them yourselves. Be adults. Please check the legality of gambling in your jurisdiction before making any bets. The risk is all yours. But just understand, Terence Crawford this morning, September 2nd, with the fight less than 2 weeks away, is now a plus 145. Right, folks? He's below a plus 150. He had been at a plus 155. The public is giving Crawford more than a 40% chance of winning this fight. Let me also point out that some big-time people in boxing are openly picking Terence Crawford. Let me name three of them. Former heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis. He knows a lot about being undisputed because he was an undisputed heavyweight champion. Andre Ward, who retired unbeaten. Folks, they're flatly taking Terence Crawford to win this fight. Let's name a third name. Sergey Kovalev, the guy who Canelo beat for the belt at 175. Right? Kovalev's view is that if Crawford can handle the weight, big qualifier, if Crawford can handle the weight, then Crawford should win the fight. Right? Keep in mind, Kovalev fought Canelo. Right? Kovalev, presumably has experience in the ring with Canelo, and he believes Crawford is more talented. Now let's talk about the other side of the ledger. Folks, I don't think the fight's close. I believe Canelo wins the fight. Just be aware of the fact that a couple of trainers, Danny Jacobs' former trainer, Andre Rozier, right? He's picking Canelo. He talks about how, Canelo was able to do things against Danny Jacobs that just cemented in his mind the fact that Canelo is defensively adept, can take the punches, is tough to beat. Also, Abel Sanchez, his guy, Golovkin, when the two were together, fought Canelo twice. Right? We're talking about trainers with experience. Backing guys who fought Canelo and who lost to Canelo. Right? You should also know, too, that Canelo at one point actually visited Big Bear, visited Sanchez's camp. Sanchez got to see him up close. Right, a little bit of an unknown story. He sparred with Golovkin before their first fight. Much earlier, right? The fight wasn't announced. It wasn't envisioned at the time. So Sanchez actually, outside of the ring, outside of fight night, outside of pre-fight ceremonies and protocol, he had Canelo in his gym. He saw Canelo. He's picking Canelo. Right? Joel Diaz, Timothy Bradley's former trainer. Right? Joel Diaz, who's trained other champions. He's picking Canelo. Right? The trainers seem to see something a lot of the public doesn't see. So let's talk about betting this fight. I understand there are many of you who feel that Canelo is vulnerable. There are many of you who feel that Crawford is going to win this fight, that Crawford has more skills. Let me just privately say, I consider Canelo to be one of the best in boxing. Right? I know here online, some viewers feel I'm biased against Canelo. No, quite the opposite is true. Right? I view Canelo as one of the best pound for pound. And the guy is coming up one fight removed from beating Errol Spence at 147, his last knockout, and he's gaining weight from 154 to get to 168, and I'm to believe he's going to beat a guy who I consider, just on skill, to be one of the best in the sport. Right? Just understand, Canelo is defensively blessed. Understand, the best punch in this fight, it's one of the best punches in the entire sport, is Canelo's left hook. Understand, Canelo knows how to throw punches from low down. So you don't know whether he's throwing it up top or he's throwing it low. Canelo, one of the hardest punchers pound for pound in boxing. Right? He hits so hard that the criticism on him is that he knocks down a Berlanga. He knocks down a Munguia. He then allows these guys to go the distance. Right? The criticism isn't that he doesn't have the power to knock guys down. The criticism is that he has the power. But even after knocking down Jermell Charlo, another undisputed champion, has anyone figured out that while Crawford was undisputed at 140 and 147, Jermell Charlo was actually undisputed at a higher weight, 154, and that fight wasn't close. In fact, Canelo dropped Charlo. Dropped him. Charlo had to get off the canvas, right? Was able to survive to go the distance. Canelo won by unanimous decision. Understand, Jermell Charlo is picking Canelo in this fight. Right? Just piece it together. Right? Canelo has already fought an undisputed champion from a weight higher than any division in which Crawford has been undisputed. So how you structure a bet is everything. Let's look at this fight. Let me also say, before I go further, ask yourself, not how many times Canelo's been stopped. Ask yourself, how many times has Canelo, who's fought a puncher at 175, and that's not the only champ at 175 he fought, because he also fought Dimitri Bivol. Right? Canelo, a guy who fought James Kirkland. Right? Now that's a fight where a shootout develops. Right? Kirkland is throwing big shots. He and Canelo actually have a pocket that's formed. Right? Kirkland, high KO percentage. Just understand, Canelo has fought punchers. And Canelo, of course, has not only not been stopped, folks, he has not been knocked down. Right? Shane Mosley, he fought him. Look at Mosley's KO percentage. Miguel Cotto, he fought him. It's not like Canelo is avoiding punchers. Golovkin, not 2 fights, 3 fights. John Ryder, he fought him. Right, folks? Canelo has never been knocked down. So, Crawford, let's say you're that gambler who believes this is going to be an upset. You need to bet on Crawford. Right? That's your mindset. You want your money at risk. It's your money. You're going to make your decision. Folks, let's enhance the odds. Crawford is a plus 145 simply to win the fight. Now, I know Crawford was a closer at 147, 21 pounds below where this fight is. Right? We understand that. But do you really believe that Crawford is going to be able to knock down Canelo, who fought Munguia, who fought Berlanga, guys with very healthy knockout ratios, who were unable to knock him down? My point to you is enhance the odds. Crawford's only chance, in my opinion, of winning this fight, short of Canelo throwing a punch and throwing out his shoulder, like Vitaly Klitschko did against Chris Bird, right? Short of Canelo suffering some freak injury, Crawford's only chance is by decision. Let's increase the plus 145 to a plus 210. Rather than take Crawford simply to win. If you're on the Crawford side of the ledger, why wouldn't you take Crawford, who went the distance his last fight, at 154? Why wouldn't you take Crawford by decision? Right, folks? I'm just telling you, Crawford's a smaller man. I don't care how they look. The secret to Canelo is you have to look at his quads. Right? Canelo might not have the height. He has the width. He has the legs that give him the torque for his power. Right? He hits much harder than Crawford. So, in my opinion, since Canelo has never been stopped in a fight, since Canelo has never been knocked down in a fight, about as tough as it's gotten for Canelo is Miguel Cotto's older brother. Look up that fight. Right? If you have to put money on Crawford, I would put it on Crawford by decision plus 210. Now let's go further here, because I don't believe, I'm just going to be blunt here, I don't believe this is the winning bet. Although it's possible that Crawford's going to start fast, like Amir Khan did against Canelo, like Kell Brook did against Golovkin. Right? The smaller man, accustomed to, opponents who throw faster, punches and stuff like that. There might be a coordination gap early in this fight. Right? So just understand, Crawford's best hope is to jump out to a lead, keep the lead, stay away from Canelo, force Canelo to come to him, land some shots when Canelo does. That's Crawford's path to success. Canelo already knows, in my opinion, Crawford cannot stay in the pocket with him. Let me repeat that. Crawford cannot stay in the pocket with him. Let me also say, too, Crawford's ambidextrous, but because some southpaws, Erislandy Lara, had some success, Billy Joe Saunders, with Canelo in the past, Crawford, who in his regular life is left-hand dominant, is going to fight lefty. Right? So Crawford's going to be moving. He's going to be fighting left-handed, just like he did against Errol Spence. Right? What he's going to do, the Crawford blueprint is the Victor Postal fight. For those who haven't seen that fight, just imagine Crawford fighting like William Skull did, only with more points of engagement. Right? Jumping in, make sure that he lands some shots on Canelo, lead with power shots in the exchanges. Crawford knocked down Victor Postal twice when they fought. Right, by the way, using that style, Crawford couldn't stop Postal. Postal actually went the distance against him. That's important here, because I'm saying forget the plus 145, Crawford simply to win. I'm saying consider Crawford by decision, plus 210. Now let's talk about the Canelo side of the play. Just understand, Canelo simply to win is a minus 175 right now. What that means is you bet $175 to win 100. Let's juice the odds, right? Understanding that anything can happen on the Canelo side of the play. By that I mean, while I view Crawford as not having a realistic shot at stopping Canelo, I believe Canelo has a distinct chance of stopping Crawford. The problem is that Canelo, as we saw in some recent fights, Munguia, Berlanga, just to name two, even when Canelo has the upper hand and drops a Berlanga early, right, Canelo takes his foot off the gas. He just wants the plane to land at the airport, right? He doesn't need the stoppage. He focuses on the win. There's a possibility that he knocks down Crawford like he did the undisputed champion at 154 pounds, Jermell Charlo. There's a chance that Canelo knocks him down and then decides, okay, I'm just going to fly the plane into the airport, right? I've won this fight. I'm the guy on my front foot. This guy's moving away from me. This guy has felt my power. Not just the knockdown shot, but the shots on the arms, the shots to the body. Right? Canelo might not go for the knockout. But I could also see a situation that develops like the Kovalev fight did. Right? Sometimes you could be content winning a decision, but your left hand is so damn explosive that the other guy is reeling and you have no choice but to finish him off. That's what Canelo did to the champion at 175 pounds at the time. So the Canelo side of the ledger, let's break it into two plays. Canelo's going off, Canelo to win, minus 175. You're a gambler, you realize it's not just about picking sides. It's about picking outcomes. Right? Given that the over-under at 10.5, the over is a minus 500, that bet's not worth it. So let's split the Canelo side into two bets that are contradictory. Canelo by decision, plus 120. Right? You've turned a minus 175 into a plus 120. But let's have a third bet. That's our real bet here. Right? I don't believe it happens, but if it did, you're in the penthouse. Canelo by stoppage. Mean Machine put down Crawford. The ref missed it. Right? Crawford is older than Canelo chronologically. Canelo by KO, believe it or not, folks, is a plus 375. Plus 375. Right? How long did Rocky Fielding last against Saul Alvarez? How long did Liam Smith last against Saul Alvarez? If you buy the thesis that they have weight classes for a reason, if you buy the thesis that Canelo doesn't even have to try to land flush on Crawford, all he has to do is come over to Crawford and hit Crawford in the body like Crawford has never been hit. Right? Batter Crawford even when Crawford has his guard up. Dimitri Bivol's skin is light. At the end of Canelo's fight against Bivol, right, and I picked Bivol in that fight, just understand, Bivol, a boxer first, was all marked up, right? His body took a beating. Now he took the beating because he was a champion at 175, right? He was accustomed to getting hit from 175 pounders. This is a guy who privately has sparred with David Benavidez. Now Crawford, folks, no knockouts above 147. None. Right? Madrimov does say that in his opinion, Crawford hits harder than Virgil Ortiz. Okay, great. Do you think Ortiz has the power to knock down Canelo? I don't. Right? How battered was Madrimov at the end of his fight with Terence Crawford? I thought he went the distance comfortably. Right? Let's also talk about crowd dynamic. Don't fall in love with crowds, even when it looks like they're making common sense. Right? I need for folks to understand that sometimes crowds are wrong. Right? You look at these old films and you see the roles given to black actors. Just understand the crowd consensus used to be that Amos and Andy was funny. That was the crowd consensus for a period of time. Right? You need to understand right now, we have gone through a multi-decade run in the United States where we weren't building nuclear plants. China has far more nuclear plants than we do. Right? Understand, we somehow convinced ourselves that windmills were going to replace nuclear energy. We were wrong. Now we're ramping up our building of nuclear plants, and we're far behind China, and yet we think we're going to return manufacturing back to the United States. Right? Focus on the crowd dynamic. Let's just go back 2 fights. We don't have to go back further than that. You remember Crawford, Errol Spence. Close your eyes and think for a moment. What portion of the public thought that Crawford was going to win that fight? Right? This is Spence, the welterweight. What percentage? I think the public mood was that that was a 50-50 fight. We all lived through that era. Right? Wasn't that the thought process? Crawford against a welterweight, 50-50? Whether the public was right before the fight or wrong. That fight was a jump ball, wasn't it? Didn't you have many Spence supporters out there? We wanted that fight. That fight had no clear favorite. We thought that fight was highly competitive. Folks, that's just 2 fights ago. That's Crawford's most recent knockout. Think about it. That's his most recent stoppage. That fight. Now, how did we go from thinking that Errol Spence was evenly matched with Crawford to thinking that Canelo, undisputed, more than 20 pounds higher than the weight for the Crawford-Spence fight? How did we go from thinking the Spence fight's a jump ball, thinking that Crawford has a better than 40% chance against the undisputed super middleweight champion? Folks, I would argue, just looking at history, since Canelo has never been stopped, I would argue the odds of any guy one fight removed from the middleweight division stopping him is slim. Right? I mean, folks, that's just the reality. Now, we seem to have been preconditioned by the fact that a cruiserweight, Usyk, jumped to heavyweight and started beating former champions. Right? So we're in an era where we say, hey, this guy can move up in weight. And of course, this comes after the Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao era where, those guys made a mockery of weight classes, right? Because they were moving up in weight, lightweight, welterweight, even taking on, heavier guys in their weight classes. Right, folks? If you believed that Errol Spence was evenly matched with Terence Crawford just 2 fights ago, you need to drown out the crowd noise that's telling you now that without having fought at 160, without having fought at 154 twice, Terence Crawford is now competitive with Canelo at 168 when he really only has one path to victory, and that's on his back foot. And of course, Canelo knows it. Right? So, if I were making a bet and I thought, Crawford has a real shot here, Crawford has a chance to win, I would think to myself, he has no chance to win by stoppage. Right? Now, this is boxing where things have happened. Right? Sonny Liston gives up the heavyweight title on his stool in a corner claiming a shoulder injury. Maybe something crazy like that's going to happen. I doubt it. I'm not going to bet on huge outliers like that. I would think Crawford's only path to victory here is to be on his back foot. It's to be lefty. It's to build up a lead early, and Crawford at times has been a slow starter. Right? How long does it take Crawford to get going in the Sean Porter fight? David Benavidez' brother fought Crawford. How long did it take Crawford to get going in that fight? Here, Crawford knows he has to be a fast starter against a heavy-handed Canelo. Right? Crawford's, in my opinion, most realistic path to success is by decision, plus 210. Because I believe Canelo wins the fight, I'm going to take 2 contradictory bets. Simply because if either happens, I want to get at least a portion of my money back. Canelo by decision, plus 120. I want to set it up so if it goes to a decision and Canelo wins the decision, and understand, it could even be a fight Canelo's dominating. Right? He knocks down Jaime Munguia. How does he win that fight? By decision. Right? Berlanga, knocked down. Jermell Charlo, knocked down. How does he win those fights? By decision. Even though none of the 3 fights are ever in doubt. Right? You're waiting for the decision and you fully expect them to say, and the winner is Saul Alvarez, right? But I do believe big punchers can't help it. Right? Canelo's going to land some big shots. Canelo needs to touch Crawford because Crawford's going to be episodic. So Canelo is going to come over. He's going to be landing big shots on Crawford's body. Let me say, too, the closeness in height actually hurts Crawford. It doesn't help him because it blurs the angles. Right? The great Larry Holmes talks about how he would throw his jab from his waist. Right? He wanted his jab outside your visual. So you couldn't quite figure out how to block it. He didn't want the jab in front of you where you thought, oh, I'm going to block this hand when he throws it. No, you wanted the jab down here someplace. So then as Larry's moving, Larry throws the jab. You're not quite sure on the angles. Revisit a fight Canelo is losing. Revisit Canelo Amir Khan. Right now, Canelo, of course, lands a big shot, knocks out Khan. What I want you to do is to look at the moments before that shot. Right? Canelo moves his hand in such a way that you don't know what Canelo's doing. And because the fighters are close in height, right? Let me also point out, too, I picked Khan in that fight. I was wrong. But Khan, I have yet to see him lose a round to Canelo apart from the round in which he was stopped. Right? But just understand, you're the same height as Canelo. Canelo starts to make a move with his hand. Because you're roughly the same height as Canelo, it's a shorter distance for Canelo to hit you in the head than it is Edgar Berlanga. Right? So, the point is, Canelo's an advanced fighter. He hits harder than Crawford. Crawford's not going to know if there are points of engagement. If Crawford's not running like Skull, Crawford is not going to know whether Canelo is going up top or whether he's hitting him in the body. Look at the left hook that pretty much ends Canelo's fight against Kovalev, a guy who's taller than Canelo. Right, folks? The effect is even more confusing to an opponent when the guy is his height. Right? Canelo starts to move his left. You understand it's explosive. He only has to be right once with it. Let's talk about hand speed for a moment. Then I'll sign off here too. People are saying Crawford has faster hands than Canelo. Okay. I need for folks to understand where skill takes over. Canelo's left hook is hair trigger. Right? This is like a Floyd Mayweather left hook. In fact, I believe Canelo picked up when to throw it from Floyd. Right? It's hair trigger. When you have hair trigger punches where they're sudden, where, the guy's driving 55, then suddenly here's this big hammer type punch that's 80 miles an hour that just jumps out at you. Folks, that'll neutralize hand speed. Let me also say, too, when a guy has a big hammer like this Canelo left hook, you can't stay in the pocket to maximize your hand speed. You can't be a combination puncher. Right? Because you understand you're on the clock. You can't risk throwing punches with both hands. Because if I've thrown a punch, I'm unprotected. I don't have a guard. If Canelo starts to throw that left and I guess wrong, I think, oh, that shot's going to be up top. And I stop the combination. I put a hand up here. And he hits me to the ribs. That might be ball game. Understand, a few Canelo shots to Crawford's ribs are going to slow him down. If you're slowed down for a puncher who hits this hard, look at the ending of the Kirkland fight. Right? Look at how overwhelmed Kirkland is by the shots. And this is a guy who fought and beat Alfredo Angulo. Right? If you're slowed, if suddenly my ribs hurt and I can't move away from Canelo, got bad news for you. You're in bad shape. Canelo by KO plus 375. Right? Let me say, too, that if Crawford realizes he made a mistake, it's round 8, and he's thinking to himself, damn, these super middleweights hit hard. Right? He doesn't have experience as super middleweight. He's wearing what? Sparring gloves and sparring against big guys? If he thinks to himself, man, and keep in mind, Ray Leonard thought this during the Donnie Lalonde fight. If he thinks to himself, man, these bigger guys, they really hit hard. If he's in trouble, Crawford, unbeaten, might do what Sonny Liston did. Right? Quit in his corner. Folks, that's a stoppage. That's a plus 375. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. If you're going to bet the Crawford side of the play, don't pay for what you don't need. Take Crawford by decision. Right? Think of all the big names Canelo has fought. None of them have knocked him down. What are the odds that a junior middleweight is going to be the first person to do that? Slim. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.